Errol Flynn looked so alive in Gentleman Jim that you'd never guess this role nearly revealed how fragile he really was. He plays James J. Corbett, the cocky boxing champion who helped make prize fighting respectable. But behind the charm, the gloves, and the roaring crowds, the story gets even stranger. So today, let's step into the ring and count down 20 fascinating facts about the Flynn classic where boxing became glamorous and the star behind the smile was under more strain than audiences ever knew. And if you stick around to number 4, you'll find out the behind-the-scenes scare Warner Brothers did not want audiences to see. Number 20. Warner Brothers found a new battlefield for Errol Flynn. By 1942, Flynn had already sailed through Captain Blood, leapt into legend in Robin Hood, ridden the frontier in Dodge City, and charged into history as Custer and They Died with Their Boots On. So where do you put a star built on danger, speed, and physical confidence? You put him in a boxing ring. Gentleman Jim gave Flynn a new arena. No sword, no pirate ship, no horse. Just gloves, footwork, timing, and a crowd waiting to be won over. And somehow it still feels like an Errol Flynn adventure. The duel has simply become a prize fight. But here's the question the whole film keeps circling. Could a rough sport become respectable if the right man knew how to sell it? We will come back to that several times. Number 19. Flynn reportedly considered this one of his favorite roles. That tells you a lot. The movie's Corbett is handsome, arrogant, quick-witted, and completely convinced the world is about to fall in love with him. But the wrong actor, that becomes unbearable. With Flynn, it becomes irresistible. The role lets him be cocky without losing the audience, romantic without turning solemn, and physical without becoming stiff. It is Flynn with the collar loosened, less mythic than Robin Hood, but in some ways more revealing. He is not just playing a champion, he is playing a man who knows how to make people watch, which raises a question worth sitting with. How much of that was actually acting? Number 18. The real Corbett was not just a fighter. Here's where the story becomes more interesting than a standard sports biography. James J. Corbett understood showmanship. He later appeared on the stage and became associated with theatrical performance. He knew how to dress, he knew how to talk, he knew how to enter a room. Long before modern athletes built public brands, Corbett was helping invent the idea of the sports celebrity. So Gentleman Jim is not really about the brute strength. It is about a man using skill, charm, and confidence to climb into a world that once looked down on him. Sound familiar? We will get there. Number 17. Corbett helped make boxing look respectable. The nickname Gentleman Jim was not just decoration. Prize fighting had a rough reputation in the 19th century, associated with gambling, backrooms, and a world polite society preferred to keep at a distance. Corbett represented a different image. He was polished, he dressed well, he moved with strategy instead of relying only on brute force. His good looks and scientific boxing style helped shape the persona. That is the movie's central tension. Can a man punch people for a living and still be accepted in high society? Warner Brothers' answer? Yes, as long as he has Errol Flynn's smile. Turns out to be more complicated than it looks. Number 16. The film was based on Corbett's own autobiography. Gentleman Jim was adapted from Corbett's book, The Roar of the Crowd. The title is almost the whole movie in 5 words. This is the story of a man chasing applause. Because Corbett helped write his own legend, there is already self-myth-making built into the foundation. Warner Brothers simply gave that legend Flynn's face, which means almost everything you see on screen has been polished twice. Once by the man who lived it, and once by the studio that sold it. Keep that in mind. It matters more than you might think right now. Number 15. Raoul Walsh was exactly the right director for this kind of Flynn. Walsh had a gift for rough humor, masculine energy, and characters who seem to burst into a room before the door is fully open. You can feel his rhythm everywhere. The scenes do not sit around politely. They bounce, characters talk fast, spar verbally, interrupt each other, and charge forward. If Michael Curtiz gave Flynn pageantry and polish, Walsh gave him momentum. And for Gentleman Jim, that was exactly what the story needed. A man charging straight toward the crowd and demanding applause. Number 14. Alexis Smith gives Flynn a real opponent outside the ring. Alexis Smith plays Victoria Ware, and her job is not simply to admire Jim Corbett. Thank goodness. Victoria is elegant, sharp, amused, and very hard to impress. The romance works because it plays like a different kind of fight. He boasts, she deflates him. He tries charm, she makes him work harder. Corbett may know how to win over a crowd, but Victoria refuses to be just another cheering spectator. But there is a name missing here that Flynn fans will immediately notice. Where is Olivia de Havilland? By 1942, Flynn and de Havilland had made 8 films together, and their chemistry was so electric that audiences had come to expect them as a pair. But de Havilland was in open conflict with Warner Brothers, pushing for better roles and more creative control. She was done being handed assignments. She eventually sued the studio over her contract and won. That ruling fundamentally changed the power studios held over actors forever. So her absence from Gentleman Jim is not just a casting footnote. It is a signal that something was shifting. Flynn was stepping into a new chapter. De Havilland was fighting to right her own. Number 13. The supporting cast is packed with familiar Golden Age faces. Among them, Jack Carson, Alan Hale, Ward Bond, William Frawley, and Madeleine LeBeau. Alan Hale brings instant warmth as Corbett's father, his presence alone connecting this film to the larger Warner Bros. Adventure universe Flynn fans already loved. William Frawley appears years before millions knew him as Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy. And Madeleine LeBeau appears in the same year she would become unforgettable to classic film fans throughout Casablanca. The movie may belong to Flynn, but the world around him has that rich Warner Bros. Bustle that made the studio's films feel like entire universes. Number 12. Ward Bond gives this film its emotional weight. Ward Bond plays John L. Sullivan, and he could easily have been treated as just the final obstacle. Instead, he becomes something more interesting. Sullivan represents the older boxing world, powerful, proud, rough-edged, and legendary. Corbett represents the new style, quicker, lighter, more strategic. When they finally meet in the ring, the fight is not only about who wins, it is about one era giving way to another. Bond gives Sullivan dignity. The movie lets us admire Corbett without making Sullivan look small. The old champion is not a villain. He is a legend whose time is passing. And that gives the final fight a surprising tenderness beneath all the noise. Two men in a ring, one of them is the future, and they both know it. Number 11. The real Corbett was known for scientific boxing. He was associated with a smarter, more strategic style, a master of defensive tactics rather than simply a heavy puncher. Timing, distance, footwork, patience over raw power. That is what makes him so interesting as a film subject. He did not just beat his opponents. He outsmarted them. He made them fight his fight instead of their own. Sound like anyone we know? Because that description fits Flynn's entire screen career. He did not overpower a scene. He charmed it into submission. And that parallel between Corbett's ring strategy and Flynn's screen strategy is exactly why this casting works as well as it does. Number 10. Flynn trained for the role. Former junior welterweight champion Mushy Callahan helped train him, and it shows. Flynn needed to look quick, coordinated, confident, and dangerous enough for the audience to believe the performance. He does. There is a spring in his movement throughout the film. He seems to enjoy the danger. Even when Corbett is being challenged, Flynn plays him like a man already halfway to victory, because he believes the crowd belongs to him. That confidence is the performance. But as with so many Golden Age illusions, there was more happening behind the curtain. Number 9. Some of the fancy footwork might not be Flynn's. Here is the fun Hollywood reveal. Flynn trained seriously and clearly performed a great deal of physical work, but Callahan also doubled him in some shots showing Corbett's fancy footwork. So the accurate version is not Flynn did everything himself, it's better than that. Flynn brought the charisma, rhythm, and personality. Callahan supplied flashes of professional skill. The editor blended it all together. And the audience saw a champion. Star power, expert doubling, and sharp cutting created one seamless performance. The magic works because you are not meant to see the seams. But here's what they do not tell you. That same principle, hide the effort, sell the confidence, was operating off camera too. We are almost to the part where that becomes impossible to ignore. Number 8. Critics noticed the boxing scenes worked. David Lardner's original review praised the action and Flynn's believability in the ring, and that is no small thing. Boxing is difficult to fake. If the punches look weak, the drama dies. If the star looks uncomfortable, the fantasy collapses. But Gentleman Jim keeps the action light, quick, theatrical, and entertaining. It is not a gritty modern boxing drama, and it is not trying to be. It wants boxing to feel witty, dangerous, and glamorous. On those terms, the film lands every punch. What the critics could not review, of course, was what was happening between takes. Number 7. The production moved fast. The filming ran from May 20th to July 23rd, 1942. That is a tight schedule for a period film with costumes, boxing sequences, crowd scenes, romance, and comedy. But that was Warner Brothers in the early 1940s. Move fast, stay on budget, keep the star working. Gentleman Jim does not feel labored. It has snap, it has bounce. It feels like a movie made by people who understand pace. The story is about quickness. The production is quickness too, but speed has a cost. And on this particular film, that cost was about to show up in the way nobody could have predicted. Number 6. The film deliberately repackaged history as entertainment, and that was the whole point. Contemporary reviewers noticed discrepancies between the film and Corbett's actual life. Some of the dramatic touches around Sullivan and the championship belt do not hold up to historical scrutiny. But here's the thing. That polishing was not a mistake. It was the product. Warner Brothers in 1942 was not making documentaries. They were making myths. They took real people, real events, real emotions, and shaped them into something audiences could root for, laugh at, and believe in for 90 minutes. That is exactly what Corbett did with his own story in The Roar of the Crowd. And it is exactly what Flynn was doing every time he stepped in front of a camera. Everyone in the story, at every level, was in the business of making the legend shinier than the truth, which makes what comes next even more striking. Number 5. The film arrived in wartime Hollywood. Gentleman Jim was released in November 1942, when America was deep into World War II. It is not a war film, but its timing matters. Wartime audiences were living in a culture of morale, courage, and national confidence. A story about a bold, self-made champion rising through nerve and skill fit that emotional moment exactly. Sometimes a morale picture does not need uniforms. Sometimes it just needs a champion. And in 1942, Flynn could still make that kind of confidence feel irresistible. Except, and here we finally get to it, there was something the audience could not see. Number 4. Flynn collapsed during filming. Now we come to the behind-the-scenes fact that changes the way the whole movie looks. Flynn collapsed while filming one of the fight sequences. The studio publicly attributed to fatigue, but doctors reportedly diagnosed a mild heart attack. The seriousness of the health scare was kept entirely from the public. That is startling, because on screen, Flynn looks almost invincible. He is quick, playful, handsome, glowing with energy. Alexis Smith later reportedly remembered warning Flynn about his lifestyle. Working hard, playing hard, wearing himself down. That gives Gentleman Jim an extra layer today. The sparkle is still there, but now we can see the cost behind it. And suddenly, Flynn's most energetic performance also feels like one of his most human. Number 3. Flynn's real life was starting to mirror Corbett's arc. Remember what we said about Corbett? A man so skilled at performing confidence that the performance became his identity. A man who polished the legend until the legend was all anyone could see. Flynn was doing the same thing in Hollywood. And remember the question we opened with? Could the right man make something rough look respectable through sheer charm? For Corbett, the answer was yes. He won the belt. He won the applause. He sold the image. For Flynn, the answer was getting more complicated. The smile was there. The crowd still cheered. But behind the curtain, the cost was mounting in ways the studio could not package. That is what makes the casting feel almost cruel in hindsight. Flynn was not just playing a showman who made the whole thing look effortless. He was living it. Number 2. The greatest illusion of the film is Flynn himself. Forget the footwork doubles, forget the polished history, forget the Technicolor sheen. The greatest trick Warner Brothers pulled in Gentleman Jim was making Errol Flynn look untouchable. The smile said nothing could reach him. The movement said danger was just another stage. And audiences believed it completely, because that is exactly what everyone in the story, from Corbett to Walsh to the studio itself, had spent their years perfecting. Hide the effort, sell the confidence, make the legend shinier than the truth. Flynn was not just starring in the movie. He was the movie. Number 1. Gentleman Jim may be Flynn's most perfectly and painfully mashed role. It is not as iconic as Robin Hood, not as sweeping as the Seahawk, not as grandly romantic as Captain Blood, but it may be the most revealing look at what made Errol Flynn magnetic, and what it cost him to stay that way. James J. Corbett understood the power of being watched. He won before he won. He entered a room like the crowd already belonged to him. He smiled as if defeat happened to other people. Flynn understood every note of that music, because in many ways, Corbett's gift was Flynn's gift. And Corbett's burden was quietly becoming Flynn's burden too. The movie is not perfect history, it is something more revealing. A glittering portrait of ambition, image, and the pressure of looking unbeatable. And behind that portrait is a man giving everything he had to keep the show going. So when we watch Gentleman Jim today, we are watching Warner Brothers transform a real sports figure into a golden age hero. We are watching Ward Bond's old champion face Flynn's dazzling new showman. We are watching Alexis Smith puncture the ego everyone else keeps feeding. And most of all, we are watching a man play a role that fit him almost too well. All of us, at some point, have to face the distance between how strong we appear and what we are really carrying. Flynn's gift was making the illusion look effortless, but the truth behind it makes the performance feel even more human. So the next time Flynn steps into that ring, watch closely. You are not just seeing a boxer. You are seeing a movie star play a showman inside a studio system that knew exactly how to turn charm into legend. And behind that legend is something even more interesting. A man who made it all look easy, even when it was anything but. If you enjoyed this one, my next video is already waiting for you. See you there.